Hey, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Lieutenant Colonel Mitch Taco Bell, your host for Taco Tall Tales on Tuesday. Hey, Merry Christmas, Happy Taco Tuesday for all those folks out there, especially MJ Harris, who sent a photo of his son having tacos tonight. Merry Christmas to everyone. I hope that this Christmas season is going to be great and a blessed new year, and we're done with 2020 as we roll out into 2021. Tonight, I'm actually really excited because I've got my stepdad on the show with us tonight. Well, I call him my stepdad, and you'll probably hear a little bit more about that as the night goes on. But we are going to share a little bit of time with Rear Admiral William Bill Schachte, and his call sign in Vietnam was Batman as he drove swift boats, and we're going to hear all about that. So I'd like to bring the Admiral on without further ado. Admiral Schachte, how are you, sir?
Hey, it's great, Mitch. Good to be with you, Taco, on Taco Night.
Taco.
Thanks.
Did Carmen make you tacos tonight? That's all I got to know.
Yeah, she's fine. She's cooking again.
Ah, good. Now, I mentioned that you were like my stepdad. Now,
Yeah.
I got to put a caveat with that. So in 1975, as a young kid, 10-year-old living on Little Creek Amphibious Base, I was walking in my backyard. We had a park, and I met this young kid named David Schachte, who I know is back there somewhere with you. And David had this big styrofoam airplane. I'm like, hey, kid, who are you? Oh, I'm David Schachte. We just moved in. I go, well, I like airplanes. Let me play with your plane. No. And I'm like, well, if I break it, I'll buy you another one. And dumb kid gave me his airplane. I threw it. It hit a telephone pole, snapped the wing in half. He runs off crying. I pick up the pieces, come up to your house, knock on the door, and I'm like, hello, sir. My name's Mitchell Bell. I live in D21, and I broke your son's airplane. I promised to buy him another one. You're like, no, that's okay. Come on in. How old are you? 10 years old? When's your birthday? November 30th? Hey, my son's December 2nd. I want you to meet Billy. And that's how I became great friends with your son. And it's been a relationship over 45 years.
Yes,
So
and a
pretty
great one.
incredible.
A great relationship, too.
And
Look,
then, yeah, go ahead, sir.
no, go ahead. I don't want to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, it was great memories. I do want to write a book about that time because growing up on Little Creek Amphibious Base from 71 to 78, so much of our life was there. I thought that every Navy kid experienced staying in one place, especially on the base like that, for their whole career, and no, that's not so. We were just blessed that Vietnam had, I guess, cut the cycle of PCS moves for one year, and then Billy and I and Shelly and Steve and everybody all grew up. Ashley, I mean, we were all right there in the same quarters for our entire childhood, almost, when you think about it.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
And I was running marathons in those days, and I had a route around the base that encompassed the entire base, and it was very good. I would do that on a Sunday because I worked every Saturday in my job then as a JAG at ComNav Surfland.
Well, I
And
also remember you would take Billy and I over to the airport on Sundays,
yeah,
and we would chase flight attendants up and down the aisle. You would drink coffee and read your paper, and we would chase these flight attendants begging for wings. We'd
yeah,
ask them for the little kid wings, which was just great times.
yeah,
It's funny. You wrote a book, Truth
yes,
Across the Waters, and it's a great book, actually bringing you all the way full circle from Charleston, where you're from, Clemson, Vietnam, a career in the Navy that spanned, how many decades, and then back to Charleston.
yeah,
But actually going through your book and reading it, I didn't realize how many times you had spent in Little Creek, going through different courses
yes,
and then also being stationed there. So goes back. I mean, you're 1963, if I remember right, and you
yep,
graduated from Clemson.
yep, that's correct.
And so then off to OCS, and you were on the Lorain County, if I remember right.
That's correct. USS Lorain County, and
How was that
that was
for your
great.
first ship? I mean,
Yeah,
what?
my first ship, I requested a small ship, and what I got was a small wardroom, which was fine. There were 11 of us.
Mhm.
The most senior guy was the chief engineer. He was a lieutenant. The skipper was a lieutenant commander. The exec was a lieutenant. And it was a great experience. We traveled around a bit, but fairly close. And then we deployed to the Caribbean. We had a battalion of Marines with us, and we brought them down to Panama, and they were conducting jungle warfare training in Panama. And then we kind of island hopped back. And about the same time, the Dominican Republic thing was heating up. So they kept us on a quasi hot standby in case something happened, because we were there with the Marines. We could have gone right in. And at the same time, the president was saying he didn't want to have another Cuba in the Caribbean. So nobody knew which way it was going to go. And one of our stops was at Roosevelt Roads.
And that's where you met your beautiful wife.
That's where I met my wife. And I was there with my roommate, Ted Jones, who now lives in Charleston, by the way.
Oh, cool.
And we went to the O Club, and the typical officers club, just a bunch of guys. All the ships were locked down, and as far as not leaving the area. And it turned out that the Admiral's wife, some months before that, had decided to convince her husband that he needed to make sure that the people in the officers club had an opportunity to meet some of the local girls. So she informally set this program in place. These girls came from, quote, nice families. They were all college graduates, and they would go to the officers club. And they said it worked really well. It kept things on an even keel. And so this first night we were there, and there was a girl laughing across the room. And I told Ted, I said, wow, did you see that lady over there, the one with the pink dress on? And he said, yeah, boy, she's got an infectious laugh. And so I danced with her, he danced with her, and I invited her to have lunch in the wardroom the next day on the ship. So one thing led to another, and they shut down the club, I think, like at 2300, and everybody left. And the next morning, I'm standing watch on my Lorain County LST. The bow doors open, and I'm standing there, and one of the messengers of the watch came over and said, Mr. Schachte, there's a car out in the parking lot with two really cute women in it, and they keep looking at the ship. And I said, oh, my God, I invited that girl to have lunch.
So you forgot?
I got on,
you forgot?
I cranked up the wardroom and told the head steward, put 2 more plates in, and please tell the captain I'll explain later. And I went, and it was Carmen and her friend. And I showed her around the ship, and she really had an amazing sense of humor and all that kind of stuff. And one of the things I did is I brought her around after we had lunch. I was showing her the ship, and I showed her my stateroom. And we were rigged for sea because we didn't know if they were going to be, singling up all lines and heading to the Dominican Republic or what. And so I opened my desk, and there was 2 pictures inside my desk. One of them was my mother, and the other one was my goddaughter, cute little blonde-headed girl. Carmen told me later she was convinced that was my daughter. So she said, whoa.
Sure.
Yeah. But anyway, then the next day, I was going to San Juan to board the Peter Rabbit, Plymouth Rock. I was going to be grading a man overboard exercise at sea on the PR. And so I'm driving the station wagon, and I got the rest of the guys and the chief that was going with me. We were going to grade the exercise. So we're driving to San Juan, and all of a sudden, one of the enlisted guys said, God almighty, did you see the women in that car? I said, what do you mean? He said, that white car just went by us. I said, no, I didn't. And I thought, hey, those girls were in a white car last night. So I got close, and all I could tell was there were a lot of long hair people in the car. So I flashed the lights, and the car pulled over to the side, and I pulled in behind it, and out walked Carmen. She was driving that car. I said, how could this be? We couldn't have planned that. And so we dated that night and started dating. And at our 50th wedding anniversary, we had one of my former EAs had a daughter who had studied voice and all that, a marvelous singer. And
Mhm.
she volunteered with her husband to do a duet. And they picked the songs. And one song that they sang that night on year 50 was from the South Pacific, Some Enchanted Evening. You know,
Right,
you may
right.
meet a stranger across a crowded floor. And that's exactly how we, what
Some
was going on that night.
enchanted
Yeah.
evening.
Yeah. Boy. So anyway, that was how I met Carmen. So talking to my Navy career, so we got married, and I had to go to my pastor at home in Charleston and get a letter from him on church stationery that he knew me, he knew my family, which is all true,
Yeah.
and I was not married. I had never been married, and I came
I
from
mean, those are
and
you're
and
jumping
and
through some
yeah,
hoops.
I couldn't go to her house from her father's direction until that priest wrote her pastor that letter.
Right.
And when the letter came, she wrote me a letter and said, "Next time you're here, come on by the house. We'd love to have dinner." So
Oh,
I said,
that's
"Wow,
funny.
it worked."
So
Yeah.
you were
So,
volunteering for all the trips down to Rosie Roads.
oh yeah, yeah, we made one, and I was on one when I bumped into you. Actually, I was going to Cuba, uh, uh, and I was on my plane, a C9, I guess you call it,
Or no,
and
C-12.
C12. Well, you were in there, and we said hello, and I think
Actually, no, no. You guys got to understand. I'm a student. I'm a C-130 student in a rag, and I'm flying with this major and this captain, and it was like all this pressure on me. And so we were in there, and this Navy pilot walks in his blue flight suit, and he's on the phone. He's like, "Sir, I apologize. I don't know what happened. The Air Force. We're down at Cocoa Beach at Patrick Air Force Base. The Air Force didn't know he was coming. They're a little upset that the flag showed up, and the base CO wasn't there on time, and all this stuff. And I'm so sorry. It was a mix-up." And so the guy leaves, and my major goes, Navy screwing it up again, just jokingly. And we got done with our brief, and I walk out to go take a hit the head, and I see the engine starting on the C-12, and I go, "Hey, who's the flag officer?" And of course, nobody ever gets your name right. And the guy goes, "Admiral Schachte or something." And I go, "Schachte?" And he goes, "Yeah, that's it." So I walk out the door, and there you are, and I give you a salute. The next thing I know, the pilot shuts the engine down, and the door opens up. You come bounding out. You give me a big bear hug. You're in uniform, all your medals and everything. You give me a big bear hug, and you're like, "Hey, give us a call. Grab Billy. We'll have lunch at the Pentagon. I'll see you when you get back to DC. Great seeing you, Mitchell. Love you. See ya." Boom, and you boop, 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 and you're up in the airplane, and then you're gone. And I walk in now. Everyone in base ops is watching this, and the major goes, "Who the hell was that?" And I go, "Oh, that was my stepdad." And those guys didn't say boo to me the rest of the time. They treated me like I was like some walking on water or whatever, because my dad was a 2-star. I always love that story. That was
yeah,
pretty funny.
I
But
did
no,
too.
when think about this. So you went from Charleston, because Lorain County was in actually Norfolk,
Oh, forget.
right? So then you went from there, and then you went to you had to go through the junior officer course, right? Was it the
Yes,
officer leadership course?
yeah,
Tell us.
that's what happened. I was on leave in Charleston, and I drove back up, and I got to the ship, and the exec told me, he said, "Bill, we've got going to send you to junior officer leadership course." I said, "Well, that's great. How long is it?" He said, "It's a week, and they'll do it here on the fib base at Little Creek. And what it is the tail end of UDT training. It's hand-to-hand combat training, and you go out in the jungle and survive, and just eating what you can live off the land, and there'll be people trying to catch you."
Right.
And I'm thinking, boy, I'm not going to go on leave again and leave this
You got
place
voluntold.
without what's going on. So I and another ensign went to the school, and it was interesting. I learned later that they were going to close that phase of UDT training,
Mhm.
and John McCain, the admiral, had decided, no, I want to keep it open, that phase. We need that badly. And I'll just call it a junior officer leadership course.
Of
So,
course.
okay, it makes sense. So I went there, and they were teaching us enough to really get in trouble with hand-to-hand combat and all this kind of stuff. And then we did the escape and evasion phase. And they loaded us up in a truck and went out to Camp AP Hill, a big Army base in Virginia, not too far from Norfolk and Little Creek and that stuff. And we got there, and I didn't mention this in my book, but there was also a bivouac going on of Army tanks,
Hmm.
and they had a big training thing going on. So we took off. There was three in my group. They broke us up in groups of three. And I was lucky. The other two, one of them was an Eagle Scout, and the other one was a civil engineering a CEC officer
Hmm.
who loved to hunt and big buzz with the outdoors. And me. And they did things like they gave you, if you smoked, they give you 3 cigarettes of your choice, and that was it. And I think they also gave us a potato or something like that, and told us, for the rest of your food, you live off the land. They had taught us about berries and crap like that in the classroom phase of this training. So we take off and go plot, and I couldn't resist it. These guys were so good. We didn't get captured, which was a
Right.
big deal. And we were doing things like walking backwards when we'd walk over a dirt road, so the tracks wouldn't look like, you could tell which way we were going the opposite way, actually. And we were proud of that. And after the third day, there was helicopters all around and broadcasting exercise cease, it's terminated, report to so and so, and and they gave us coordinates. And it turned out to be kind of a waterfall area.
Hmm.
And they said, all right, guys, just hang around here. There's some soap here, and somebody's got a bottle of shampoo. Just freshen yourself up a little bit and relax. You're
Uh-huh.
fine. They found the missing group. So they were all relieved too. So I'm sitting there after we got out of this waterfall, and I told the other two guys, I said, you know what? I actually have some money in my boot. I stuck a $5 bill in there. And, when we were driving out here, and these were back roads to Camp AP Hill, there are gas stations, and every gas station in this area sells
Right.
beer and all that. So why don't we ease across that road and hitchhike to the nearest gas station? I got some money. We'll have a beer. Hell yeah. They didn't tell us not to leave. They just said relax and. So we did that. And so we got to this gas station. I don't remember anything about the ride and the hitchhike thing, but
Right.
we were at the gas station and I pulled out the $5 bill. And back in those days, we're talking 1964. Uh,
60 cents. 60 cents for a six pack, right?
yeah, something like that. But anyway, I got each one of us a beer. And we're
Uh-huh.
standing there drinking this beer and laughing about, the course and all that stuff. And all of a sudden, some Jeeps pulled up to the gas station. And the first guy out of there, and I turned to the other side, they were the trainers on this thing that I just come from in AP Hill. And the head
Uh-huh.
guy was there. And boy, they raised hell with us. And finally, one of them said, but you know what? You were not told not to leave. So get your asses out in those Jeeps and get back there. And don't leave. Stay there. Oh, okay. So we left, and I figured that was the end of that one. And that was my escape and evasion training. And
Right.
so I'm on swift boat training, and they were telling me now this is the last phase. It's going to be jungle warfare stuff, and you go into escape and evasion, and there'll be people trying to catch you. And I said, wow, I've done that before. You have? Let me check your record. And there was nothing in my record about it.
Yeah.
So I said, well, who's running this course? And he said, well, this is a guy, and it fit the description of the guy that was running our course. He's a
Uh-huh.
Native American. He is a Mustang, and former enlisted guy, and he is a commander. The guy was a lieutenant commander when we were in Little Creek. He was a commander. And I said, that sounds very familiar. I went through that training, and if it's the same LDO Mustang, he may remember me. I said, what? And I said, yes, it's a long shot, but you know, if you can verify I've had the training, I don't have to go, right? Yeah, that's right, Mr.
Yeah.
Schachte. So they did. They contacted the guy, and he said, yes. Well, what do you got? And they told him there was a guy there who was, when he was in the Norfolk area, went on the training, and he said, you might remember him. He said, I might, really? And they said, yes. And he said, well, describe this guy to me. He said, well, his name is Bill. The last name, I think, is Schachte or Schachte, something like that. And the Mustang said, I remember that guy. That's the beer guy. Yes, he did go through this training. So I didn't have to go. They cleared me. He said, no, you'd already done it. And,
Thank God. So you got a couple
so
days off, and you
yeah,
get
with
beat up like your
Carmen and
buddies.
Billy had flown out on our nickel. We weren't at school long enough to get PCS money or TAD funds. And I borrowed one of the guy's cars. So I did, we want our own finances, which was next to nothing. And I borrowed one of them's car, and I made a big mistake because I met them when they all came back. So these guys get out of this truck, with, all straggly bearded and tired as hell, and look at me, I'm all clean shaven and standing there with my wife and son. And I thought, boy, this was a big mistake.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Assume the position.
Yeah.
When I went through SEER school up in Brunswick, Maine, it was January, right? Freezing cold, 3 feet of snow, the whole 9 yards. And you guys got waterboarded, and we got the smoke torture. When I got done with that, my dad told me, son, I got a little advice for you. Xerox copy that SEER school certification, and I want you to go put a copy in the safety deposit box, because one day somebody's going to go, I don't see you went through training, Lieutenant Bell, and you don't want to go back through again, do you? And I'm like, no, I don't. So I kept that thing. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You didn't want to get stuck. So you did all that training.
Right.
And then in January of '68, your happy bud is over in Vietnam.
Right.
So tell us about the Swift boats and how all that came about.
I had volunteered for Vietnam as soon as I was commissioned. Mm-hmm. It was just getting started, and I guess I felt kind of like a phony. I'm in uniform and there's a war going on, and what am I doing? And then I was able to get orders to Puerto Rico, where Carmen is from, as we mentioned. Mm-hmm. And I really felt out of place. We were in Savannah Sake. I was running the fleet broadcast, Tango Romeo, one of many that were involved in that. And I volunteered again. And this time I sent a letter. That last time I wrote my own letter. Mm-hmm. And I got a letter from a detailer saying, thank you for your interest, and we'll keep an eye on you, or something like that. So in this one, I sent it to the chain of command, to Bupers. And the captain at the base there, at the command, put an amazing endorsement. I came across it the other day after working on my book, and it was very heavy. And I knew I had not told Carmen about this, and I knew I'd have a month or so to kind of figure out how to, And it turns out once my letter got to D.C., things were really turning south in Vietnam, and they were apparently eager to get anybody they could out there. And I got message orders. So I said, oh, my Lord. And I told Carmen, and I'll never forget it, we drove down San Juan on a Sunday, because my message orders came in on a Saturday. Mm-hmm. And Puff the Magic Dragon was playing on the radio. I'll never forget that song. And so I told her what I was done, and she was pretty upset about it. And then she eventually accepted it, and because I was leaving her, we had a son by then, Billy, who had just learned to walk. Yeah. So we did that, and I went to Coronado, and as soon as I found a place, we had trouble finding a place that would rent to me, because we had a baby, an infant. And I found a motel in Imperial Beach that was owned and managed by a real nice lady whose son was flying off carriers in North Vietnam, off the coast of North Vietnam. So she was very understanding, and we stayed there. Years later, when I was a flag officer, I was out in San Diego to make a speech at a change of command.
Uh-huh.
And we had some downtime, Carmen and I, and we went back to Imperial Beach and found that motel.
Oh, is it still there?
Yeah, it was still there. It was
Oh, wow.
changed. There used to be a beautiful pool in the middle of it. It was shaped square like, and in the middle was this beautiful swimming pool. I had a picture of Carmen and Billy that I kept always.
Hmm.
That was still there, but it was filled in, and there was a palm tree growing out of the middle of it.
Wow.
So time passes. So anyway, that's how. And then flying over to Vietnam, a good friend of mine uh, had recently gotten married and had volunteered for swift boats, and
Hmm.
he and his wife drove cross country to get to Coronado for our training. And he sat behind me on the flight over, and we made a fuel stop in Japan, in
Hmm.
Narita, and they made us keep all the windows closed. The Japanese government didn't want anybody to know that they had anything to do with the Vietnam War or helping
Mm.
the Americans in any way. And poor Jim sat behind me writing love letters the whole trip over. And I would kid him later because when everybody got a call sign, and his was Rookie Romeo. His, anyway,
And
but
how did you get Batman?
uh, well, it was popular at the time. I had several. That was actually my ambush call sign,
Uh-huh.
Batman. And the
Batman.
swift boat riding shotgun would be Robin. And that crap was coming pretty popular on TVs back in the 60s, late
Right.
60s.
Right.
And that's how that happened. And but anyway, so I got there, and they said there's a truck for you guys back over here. So go to there, and they'll give you a ride to your base here on the Cameron Peninsula. So we all got in this truck in the back of it, and we had been flying overnight and all that kind of stuff. And it was like we were chasing the sun. It finally started getting dark by the time we're pulling into Cameron Bay. And by the time we got in that truck, there were, I don't know, 8 or 9 of us. It was starting to get real dark. And I was just curious. I said, how far are we going to go in this truck? I didn't see any weapons. The guy in the front seat had an M16, but none of us had anything. And
Right.
you don't know anything about Vietnam. And so we drove to the base in the back of the truck and got there to the place where the guys had the big hooch, where everybody had a sack and that kind of stuff. And I was trying to introduce myself to them, and nothing I said made any sense. Like I was saying, who do you think's going to win the Super Bowl? What Super Bowl? What the hell are you talking about? It
Newbie.
that was it was rotating in and out. Not aware of what's going on. And one of the watches that was very popular while I was there was a Seiko watch
Uh-huh.
that gave the day and the date. And the day was important because nobody ever knew what day of the week it was. We did,
Right.
we had briefings you come back on a patrol, and if you're lucky, you got plenty of time to take a shower and,
Right.
take a snooze and off you go. So we did that, and I had 99 missions, and a lot of it were kind of interesting. To put it that way, we inserted Marine recons and SEALs and all that sort of stuff.
Tell me about the
And,
story about your M16 and you wanted a Tommy gun. Who was
oh,
the guy that got you a Tommy gun?
oh, that was from one of the ships. It was an old 45 caliber machine gun, and these guys were on the beach, and it was doing TET, and we were dropping VT on them on an area that they were, and they had it calibrated so it'd go off quite a bit above where they were because they were dug in on this thing.
Uh-huh.
And this guy came to me and he said, we can't give you anything. You guys get better food than we do in the Navy. I don't give a damn even if you're on that little runny ass boat. So we can't give you that. And he said, but I've got a good buddy on the 19 boat. It was a DD something 119. And he said, I radioed him about you guys on your boat and all that. Why don't you go out there and ask for Chief? I can't remember the guy's name now. he's got a present for you. And I said, oh, really? That's interesting. So I went in and he gave me this machine gun, and it was World War II vintage. But
Right.
I used that quite a bit. Yeah, I had that. And another one that I had, other than we had plenty of M16s on the boat and all that, was a double-aught buck pump shotgun.
Uh-huh.
And I would use that. One of the perils that there were a lot of perils that you didn't know about until you got in country was when we used to pull out alongside a junk looking for contraband, weapons, whatever, and they would throw a line over to the swift boat, and the swift boat
Yeah.
would tie it alongside, board it, and all that. Once in an area north of our op area, they did this with a junk, and the guy bent over in the junk and looked like he was fooling with some lines, and he turned around and pitched. He was pulling the plug out of a grenade and threw it in the gun tub of the swift boat standing by
Yeah.
and killed the gunner. And I think the skipper was wounded with some shrapnel. But so we changed that. And now the swift boat would throw the lines over and the guys would tie them on. And the only problem with that is about 3 o'clock in the morning or whatever, somebody would forget to take one of the lines in. And those swift boats have two V12 diesel engines.
Uh-huh.
And those screws would start spinning and suck a piece of line right in it without a problem.
Yeah.
And so you had to get somebody over the side with a knife and cut that rope out of the screw area.
Right.
But when you get the lights, if you're kind of close to the shore, the lights were attracting sea snakes. And these were the things that, I think you
Those are
had
the
like 30
poisonous ones.
seconds to live.
Right.
And,
Right.
and so I would get on the fantail with the shotgun, and our engine man, our snipe, was a guy that loved to do this, and we'd tie a rope around his stomach,
Uh-huh.
and they'd go over the side, and we'd put the lights on, a knife and a K-bar, and cut away on the stuff, and eventually you could see just the head of a snake heading out for the light and looking for whatever, and it yanked that line one time, and they didn't get out of the water right away. And more than once, I really had to open up on them with that shotgun to get the damn snakes away before the guy could get up on the boat. And so I used that. But that Thompson, I kept that in my room. And a guy that had a little room next to mine, everybody had a weapon all the time.
Sure.
Because you never knew about sapper squads or any of that kind of stuff.
Well, you guys
And
had an incident where some Naval Academy guy was killed
sorry?
when they ran out. He was a brand new guy, and
Oh,
they had
yeah,
to
right. And I was
get
just going to tell you
weapons in or
about that.
something.
I was in Bungro Bay, north of our area. And the CO of that group was an Army lieutenant colonel. He was concerned about all the drinking and the weapons, and he locked their weapons down, and they got hit by a sapper squad. 2 guys were killed trying to get the lock open so they could get their M16s. And this one kid who had been in country 1 week heard all the firing and all that. His roommate dove under his roommate's bed. And he went outside to see what was going on and took a round right in the head, blew his back of it. It was horrible.
Yeah.
But apparently nobody briefed him, anything like that. You go for cover. Don't, try to find out what's going on.
Did they change that policy?
Oh, yeah. Well, they sent 2 colonels in to command that base.
Uh-huh.
And nobody ever locked them down again. One of my real exciting nights in Vietnam was a night, with so many weapons around all the time. You ran the risk of somebody flipping out and doing something pretty bad. And the skipper was out patrolling we used to train guys. That's how Carey wound up at COSDIV 14 to get qualified. And the skipper was out. So when the enlisted guy from Radio Shack came in, he said, Mr. Schachte, you got to get down to the piers right away. There's a problem down there. I don't know what it is. So I hopped in my Jeep and went down there, and they said, there's a guy from one of the other boats. They knew the boat officer's name, and they were sending somebody to get him. He said he's not speaking to anybody, and he's sitting on a ballard at the end of the pier. And I said, okay, how we set up? He said, we got a sniper on the other pier. And I said, tell that person not to do a damn thing unless he hears it from me. And I know that's, but
Yeah, that might be too late. That might be
Yeah.
too late by that time.
Yeah, I know that, and I was thinking that, but I'd rather do that than have some overreaction and killing a guy
Sure,
that's just.
sure.
So anyway, I walked out to the end of the pier where he was, and when I got almost right up to him, he leaned up and he pulled up what was behind the ballot. I couldn't see it. It was a 38 caliber pistol cocked, and it was about this far from my head. And the guys watching the sniper stuff and everything, they said I walked out and without missing a beat, just started walking back. So, but anyway, we got his boat officer out there, and he calmed him down, and it was a flip out. And we had contacted the Air Force Hospital, and they sent an ambulance with a straight jacket, and so we walked him off. And last I heard of that, he was medevaced. So, but that was an example of just how these things can happen. And
how about the time you're out there and Puff the Magic Dragon, you pulled those guys away?
Oh yeah, that was the night we sunk a trawler, and Skip Hibbert, our division commander, what a great experience that was for me. I learned more about leadership just by watching him, not listening to him. But he led a team of boats in. We had 3 trawlers. It was a Tet resupply mission out of China. And they'd been tracking them and all that. And they caught this one boat going in north of Nha Trang. And there was an area, Maviak Mountain. And it was like a natural bay area. But the water at the shoreline was like 40 feet deep. It was amazing. Mm-hmm. And that was, they were going to pull in there and unload the stuff. And we were tracking them and he got located. So
now, how big of a boat is this Vietnamese skiff?
Oh, the trawlers.
Yeah, the trawlers. How big of a boat?
It can be 60, 75 feet.
Pretty good size.
They wouldn't put any flags on them or, and this one that we went after that night was mounted with anti-aircraft machine guns. And that's what they were shooting at the swift boats with. So we got a call. The radioman came to my SAC and he said, Mr. Schachte, we just got word from headquarters. They want to scramble all the boats, and the 68 boat is still here. So, yeah, that's right. It's just back from Yokosuka, where it was in overhaul. So I said, well, we round up my crew. And we had been out for many hours, and so they wasn't at the enlisted men's club having a relaxing evening. So I got everybody on the boat, and then I found out they didn't have both 50 caliber machine guns above the pilot house. Only one of them was up there. And we had to tie that with a piece of rope. And on the stern, we had the mortar and the 50 caliber, but no ammo for the mortar. So the only thing we could find was Willie Peter, white phosphorus. So we had a couple of cases of that exposed on the stern. And I took off. We told us to pick up an interpreter on the little island, Bimbo Island, which is right across from where our piers were. So I pulled in. There's a small Navy detachment and got a young man who was assigned to us who spoke some English. And he got on the boat and we took off. And then I found out the radar was down. The Fox mic radio was not working. And so I got on sideband and told Sector we were leaving and we were going to island hop because the radar wasn't working. And my boat driver was very experienced. We'd been around it. So we're making flank headed to this rendezvous with this trawler. And there was a firefight going on at the time. So we turned the curve in an area and then went into the bay. And it's like the theater opened up. It was this big tracer flyer going both ways from the trawler and the swift boats. And the swift boats were deployed. Skip Hibbert had them very tactfully deployed. I think one guy lost an arm that night and stuff. But anyway, so we're closing, and I called Sector and I said, to remind, only sideband this unit. So he said, okay, we got some people coming in to help. We'll get them in touch with you. And that's when they sent a Puff the Magic Dragon ship in to bay and, work on the trawler. And the guy came up on the sideband radio, and I loved working with those guys. I did that a couple of times. They're always so relaxed and cool. And as I was getting ready to close the firefight, the trawler self-detonated, exploded. And I mean, it was a humongous explosion. And the stuff actually went up by the puff. And it sort of pilots on sideband with me, and he's, whoa! Boy, you sailors almost got us with that one. We had crap flying around this plane everywhere. And I said, well, I'm glad you're here. He said, yeah, I want to tell you something. You damn sailors broke up one hell of a poker game, too. We had to scramble to get out of here. But it turned out they were not used at all. And I used to love it because they were always so quiet and so peaceful and humorous, just relax.
Yeah.
And so anyway, that was a trawler night. And
I mean, was it kind of like a moonless night? I mean,
yeah.
Can you got enough ambient light to see the islands, know where you're going?
There was some light. It wasn't completely moonless. Mm-hmm. And we've had those. We used to run these ambushes. We'd bring a M16 it was a Starlight, or an M14 with an infrared if it was a bad night,
right?
Skywise. And but anyway, so that was that incident, and working with those guys, and we'd worked with them in the past and all that. Good people.
Well, talk about the skiff operation. So you had your patrol boat, the swift boat, and then you do the skiff deal.
Yeah,
talk about that.
We were told that by this time, and by the way, a point in the book, the anti-war demonstrations going on in the States, and that was kind of deflating to pick up Stars and Stripes and see the front page article about some big demonstration somewhere about getting the men from Vietnam out of the war, and it was a waste of time, and so anyway, they told us to put the heat on. They were going to do a bombing halt and do things differently we'd never done before.
Right.
So I was the exec and also the intel officer on our division of boats by then. And we used to get these feeder reports from results of interrogations and stuff. And on occasion, they would have information on a Viet Cong VC meeting that was going to be scheduled in some op area. Mm-hmm. And I started thinking, if we could intercept those things, and we had a skimmer, about a 15-foot boat that we used to go between the boats when the boats were in port and just, doing crap with them. And I think it was Johnson Seahorse 25 horsepower motor. And so I got it approved. I conceived this thing. If we get intelligence reports evidencing and correlated, evidencing there would be a meeting or some kind of thing that they were supposed to be having in our general op area, which is 100 and something miles, including the rivers and stuff. And so I said, we can get that skimmer that we have here, tow it behind a swift boat, get 2 officers. And I wanted officers because officers would be easy to hold accountable than sticking an enlisted guy and he winds up blowing away a clam digger or something and not having anything to do with combat. And I just felt that was more reasonable, more fair. And the enlisted guys used to kid because if we'd made contact, we would sometimes have a fact that would be tuned in on Fox Mike, and he could divert. He had divert authority on anything that might be up in that area and send them in a treetop and blow the hell out of whatever was there.
Right.
And so we were doing all that, and on these operations when they happen, if we made contact, you get an after-action report. In fact, your parents, on the early days of the swift boat thing, came across one of my after-action reports, which was necessary because a certain former senator was saying that it didn't happen that way. It was all enlisted guys and him, that kind of stuff. But anyway, so we'd get to the area, and it worked out well a couple of times. Most of the time, we didn't. I don't think it's because they figured out what we were doing, but you never could tell. Yeah. And if you get in close enough to the shoreline, as you know, across water, sound really travels.
Sure.
So we were listening for something or looking for something and all that. And when word got out of what we were doing, they tried it north, and the boat took two 81 Mike rounds killed everybody in the boat. I think one guy survived. So they put an immediate stop on that stuff. But anyway, then John Kerry reported to our division in swift boat training, and he heard about this thing, and he really wanted to go. And I told him, I said, John, that's fine. I appreciate your enthusiasm, but you don't train on something like this. It's not fair to the crew. It's not fair to the person.
Sure.
It's not like riding a bike by learning how to do it on a computer. You got to go out there and do it. And he kept after me, and finally I said, okay, we've got, I think, my last one coming up in early December. So we went and we scoped in the M16. We had plenty of moon that night. So we would sight it in to make sure it was accurate. And then you had to be very careful with that weapon, getting it in the skimmer and on the swift boat. And
Knocking that
Yeah.
scope and getting
So
it out of
yeah,
adjustment.
so we were in the boat as per normal. The two officers laying down, and when I presented the whole plan to the division, boy, you're going to have choppers standing by. We're going to have Cobra gunships right there, and because we'd had a mission before, the Cobras were supposed to be there, and they were a no-show, and it was not a good scene. So I said, no, we're going to do a standby. We'll have a FAC in the air if we're lucky. And they said, Schachte, you must be crazy. And I could do that. And I said, all right, I'll go on every one. We're going to have an M64. That'll be me. Then I need a scoped weapon, and that'll be an officer. And then we have an enlisted guy to work the motor. And all right. So I got volunteers. Everybody that went on that were volunteers. And the enlisted guys got to be funny about it, actually, because when something crazy would happen, they'd have to get that damn motor cranked. And they said they'd have to stand up and be pulling on the thing, and big time target. But fortunately, nothing ever happened. We were able to get out and all that sort of stuff. So this one night, we were in this shore area, and it's similar to area where the trawler was. Maviak Mountain was just across the bay. And I thought I saw something move and looked like it was going to hide behind a big boulder that was in the vicinity. And that had happened a couple of missions before, and we had some luck. So I kicked John, and my gun was already loaded and double cocked, and we double loaded tracer on the weapon so you could see him. If the Swift happened to be in the area, they could see where to lob their mortars. And I opened up on this thing. And this, whatever it was, looked like it jumped behind a boulder. And John opened up with his M16 in automatic. And my tracer was going straight, and his tracer was angling into mine. You can't see this, but I can't do that well on the screen. But anyway, so all of a sudden, my gun jammed, which was not unusual with double-loaded tracers, and dead silence. I could hear the water lapping on the shore again. I heard some movement from John, and then I heard the thunks, pow! And I got there, he grabbed that M79 and squeezed off around.
Right.
And we weren't in the kill radius, but there's a blowback area with an M79 round. And we got in that, and he nicked himself in the arm.
But then you guys were going straight towards the shore when he lobbed that thing. So the people understand, M79 grenade launcher shoots a single 40 Mike grenade.
Huge.
And that thing is going at an arc like this, and your boat's driving towards the impact of the shore, and then you got the boat turned at the last second. That's kind of broadside, and he picked up a little shrapnel. Is that am I correct?
Yeah, and it was identified as this is an M79 piece for those who knew. And so we then got back into port that next morning, I think maybe 5, and I had to debrief the division commander. And I told him, I said, no after action report, no enemy action. Oh, and by the way, John nicked himself. He said, what? He said, well, and then I told him the whole story. He said, oh, well, thank God that didn't go into somebody's eye. It could have gone into your brain and all that. So I then took a shower and been up all night and hit the rack. And at just about dozing off, and one of the enlisted guys from the Radio Shack said, "Skipper wants to see you immediately." So, oh my God, we lost somebody or something. So
Right.
I threw on my clothes, didn't even shave, just ran over there, and Skip Hibbard was talking with Lieutenant Junior Grade Carey,
Mm-hmm.
and he said, "Bill, tell me again what happened last night and early this morning." So I told him the whole story again, and I said, "What's the problem?" And John had his hand out like it was a cup, and he had a little piece of curly Q in it, and he said he wants a Purple Heart for that. And I
For
said,
shooting himself.
yeah. I said, "Oh, geez, I can't acknowledge that." And Skip, the skipper threw him out of his office, but it was all right. You know, he was new in country and so on and so forth, but he got tagged with that pretty much. You're really close with the guys that you strap on weapons with and all that. So that was an amazing situation. And then I was then transferred to the University of Rochester, Navy ROTC program, and I found out that he had gotten a Purple Heart for that.
So he
And
waited probably till you had left and
I
Hibbert
had
had
left,
left,
and the skipper had left. Yeah,
and then presented the paperwork.
yeah, and he had a statement from the doctor, who, by the way, submitted a sworn deposition on the Swiftboat Veterans for took the air, and told a story from his perspective and all that. So don't know to this day how that became a reality, but it did, and that was the end of that.
Well, I do want to say this. I'm going to big shout out to my parents. Not a lot of people know this because they lived up in DC, pretty
Right.
mixed group of people up there. My mom and dad, she was a Navy wife. As a genealogist and researcher, was working with one of the chiefs for the Swift Boats Veterans for Truth.
Yeah.
And she'd gotten hooked up with John O'Neill and those guys. And she and my dad would go down to the Navy Yard, or she would go down, she would get the documents and bring them back. And my dad, having been up at the group, and you guys were there about the same time.
Yes.
He was up at Danang. You were there cross time lap.
Yeah.
As a higher headquarters, he had written a lot of the messages, and so he knew how to debrief them and look. And when a certain senator would make a claim about going out in operations during Christmas of whatever,
Mhm.
and they pulled up the message of, oh, by the way, there was a typhoon that all the boats were tied down and they weren't allowed to leave. They were in port, so it's actually, I'm very proud of my mom and dad for the work they did. And as I've got everybody's signature in here, and I even have you there, sir.
Yeah.
So, Mom, Dad, if you're listening to this, I want you to know I'm very proud of your hard and diligent work to make sure that the truth was brought out. And it was only because of
was
your,
an amazing
your
thing.
hard
And
research.
of course, I met your parents when we met, and love your mom and your dad. Quite a guy,
Mhm.
Dookie, and a real good engineer, as I recall. But yeah, that was an amazing find, because the people were starting, when the book came out, I had clients. I was with a big DC law firm, and I told them, I said, "Look, guys, I can stay out of this because the division commander who handled that end of it submitted a sworn affidavit, as did the doctor. So they won't need me." So when John O'Neill, who, by the way, is a real hero in my life, that guy is a genius and a hell of a Swiftie.
Mhm.
But when we had worked on this stuff, and he had me in chapter 1 in the Purple Heart.
Mhm.
And when the book was released, I had told all my clients, and I said, "Look, this thing happened." He knew I'd been in Vietnam. I said, "No worry, it's covered." And Chris Matthews, what's the guy?
Wallace. Chris Wallace, right?
He used to do the hardball.
Chris Wallace. Oh,
No.
Chris Matthews. Chris Matthews.
Yes, Matthews.
Right.
When he got his hands on the book, then I'm in and all that. He said, "Well, you got to even pronounce my name correctly." This guy in Charleston, this Admiral Schachte, and he said this in the book, and he's a liar. That's why he's saying he's a liar. And then Lenny Davis, this guy is from South Carolina, is a liar. And I told my folks, then I said, guys, I'm sorry, I'm in this thing now. And I think it'll go all right. But anyway, I'm going to have to be public. And I didn't want to because I was really flying solo, and me against the Democratic National Committee. And good friends would call me and say things like, Bill, if there's any way we can get out of that, get out of it. I've seen these before. It's going to destroy your health. It'll destroy your family. You'll have all kinds of problems. And you got to understand, you're not familiar with this. Millions of dollars are involved in this. So there's a lot riding on this line. And one thing led to another, and we were beleaguered. And finally, I said, I'm going to do one interview, and then I'll be happy to do a print interview. So I did that, and the law firm got me with some guy that did that stuff for a living, and he got involved with the press, and he said they want to do an interview on camera with you, and you can pick out who you want to go with. I loved Sean Hannity, but I said no. I had been requested by that group and the others. I said no, I think I want to go with NBC News. I said what? I said yeah. Let's go in the big mouth, and I did. And he said who? And I said Lisa Myers. She had gotten my unlisted cell phone. I don't know what all of it. Always very polite and very professional. So I said okay, I'll set up a call with her, and we did. And I was at our place at Kiowa Island, and I was told at 3:00 there would be a phone call. So I answered the phone at 3:00, and it was Lisa Myers, and said, Admiral, I've got three producers on the phone from New York City. I've got one producer on the phone with me here in Washington, D.C., and we want to talk with you, but I want to let you know this is not going to go anywhere for at least 8 or 9 weeks, probably, maybe more. And I said, okay. And she said, now I understand you knew the subject of this. And I said, let me tell you the story. So I spoke straight for about 30 minutes. And when I finished, there was dead silence on the phone. The next voice was Lisa Myers. Can you be in Washington, D.C. tomorrow night? We're going to get this in the can and on the air soon.
Wow,
So,
they're actually against Kerry?
No,
That's
they
amazing.
wanted to get the story out.
Oh,
And
yeah.
they knew
But
it
I
was
mean, the
hot.
fact that yeah.
Yeah. And they didn't know, if you read, by the way, you pointed to the book. The transcript of my interview is in that book.
Right, at the very end.
Yeah, and you can see how she wanted me to say some unfortunate things about him, that he shouldn't be president and all that. But I mean, just being a very aggressive reporter, and so on and so forth. So that went well, and we did go to D.C., and we were up there. 2 days after I got that phone call, I was sitting down in front of a camera, and I was interviewed for an hour and a half by Lisa Myers. And she's good. She's a real professional.
If I remember right, that interview came out, and right before the crap storm hit, not one, but two hurricanes hit and came up and tore up through the Gulf of Mexico and up across Florida and then up. And all of a sudden, everything kind of disappeared. I mean, the news was all about the hurricane.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, wow, you really dodged a bullet on that one.
Right.
But you're actually kind of used to media stuff because the other interview you had with Mike Wallace.
I inherited that. I had taken over. By the way, I have an extra light that just went out, but I guess it's...
No, you look great.
Okay. I had inherited the investigation on the explosion on the Iowa. And I was in this course called Capstone that all new admirals and generals have to go through as a part of the Goldwater-Nichols legislation. And I got word while I was in this course, they called me out of one of the classrooms and said, Admiral, you've been notified to call the Secretary of the Navy's EA. Here's the number. And I called, and he said, Bill, the Secretary has made you available to be on the Mike Wallace 60 Minutes program. And I said, well, okay, well, what's the issue? What has come up? And they said, well, it's the Iowa investigation.
Oh,
I said, oh, okay. So I called my office, and while I was still out in the hallway, and asked them, I said, look, I'm going to be on TV. I'm not sure when. It may be soon. And it's on the Iowa. And I know our guys have done a lot of work, and it's just about completely over. You're writing the report and all that, and it worked with the FBI too, and all that. So send me some information on that. And the guy said, Admiral, I've got about 5 boxes of information. How much do you want? And I said, I'd like to see the executive summaries, please.
right.
So they gave that to me. And because they'd had some other guys that were interviewed by Mike Wallace also, Navy guys.
And
And
he's not easy.
so, no, he's tough. And I had been alert. I had some good media training guys, Navy people, Chinfo, and they did a walkthrough drill with me. One guy played Mike Wallace, and they were trying to get me to lose cool and all that. And that was extremely helpful. And one of the things they did, several things that were very helpful. One of them, your answers. If you don't know the answer, tell them that.
Right.
Keep your answers in 15 to 20-second sound bites on this elaboration stuff. And look at his face, look at his eyes where they would be, because producers and people will be giving him material. And one of the tricks on that is they want to get you looking around, and you look kind of nervous. Don't do that. Oh, and finally, take some, if they want to powder your nose, take some makeup. That's not anything wrong. So they told me he wanted to do the interview on a Sunday, and I could pick the time and the venue. I said my office and what is now NCIS headquarters, and I immediately called my executive assistant. And I said, get that damn new furniture out of that office and put that old crap we used to have in there back in the office. So they did that, and I got as prepared as I could, and I showed up, and my parking space was occupied by a big Cadillac limo, and the driver was in behind the wheel in the seat way back, sound asleep, mouth wide open. And I looked up from the street to my office, and I said all the clay lights were on. Everybody was there and set up, and I was actually a little bit early. So I walked in, and Mr. Wallace was there, and I shook his hand, and I'm standing there with my hat in my hand, and he said, "Okay, here are the rules. I am Mike, and you're Admiral." I said, "No, really, I'm Bill." He said, "No, you aren't. You're Admiral, and I'm Mike. You got that?" And, yes, sir. I'm sorry, I got it. And so they said, "Here, put this mic around your shirt. We want to." And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So 5, 4, 3. We got the sound right. All right, let's get him over here. And I said, "Hey, can I go comb my hair?" I just took my hat off, and so I went in the bathroom. He said, "Oh yeah, we'll give you some makeup. Don't worry about that." So I went and combed my hair and put my hat down somewhere on the hat ring, and went in and they powdered my forehead and nose. And they said, "All right, we're ready." And then Mr. Wallace said, um, "Admiral, we're going to break at the 30-minute point because this big camera behind you with that roll behind it. I guess it's all different now, but it had a film thing in there. And you have to change rolls in 30 minutes. And so when we stopped to change that, if there is any question that you feel uncertain about, you'd like for me to re-ask it or ask it again so you can give a different answer, just let me know." And I was thinking, yeah, and I know which one you'll use too, the one I didn't want. But anyway, so we started the interview, and I was told it was going to be very friendly. And he's a good man. I mean, and boy, this must have been difficult. I said it was extremely difficult. He said, "No, I mean, So he did all that. And then towards the end of the 30-minute, people were walking all around, and we had a mic in the room. I was taping it. And he looked at his note clipboard that they were passing notes to him on and all that, and just looked down, and like nobody could hear, but we could. I was very faint and clear. And, "Tough son of a bitch," just like that. And I said, "Oh, you sure are, Mr. Wallace. This is the most," and I think that really tacked him off. This is one of the most excruciating experiences of my life. And we got to do a whole another 30 minutes in just one moment. So we started again. And when it was over, he was like a totally different person,
Uh-huh.
very friendly. And that was the night they were airing his interview with Nancy Reagan on her astronomy and all that, if you remember that show. And then he turned to one of the cameramen and he said, "You got a score yet?" And he said, "No, it was on the New York Giants football game." So here's another just a human being, good guy, and
Yeah.
all nice person, but
Well, you
pretty tough in the group.
take you back to you were NCIS,
Yes.
head JAG and
Yeah.
head NIS at the time when they came out with the TV show JAG.
Oh yeah.
Donald, tell about that. Donald Bellisario came to your office and he modeled AJ. What was his name? Admiral. The Admiral after
I
you,
don't know.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, a little bit before that, our group was getting beat up. In fact, in the book, there's a New York Times article that they got with a picture of me and my three senior guys who were really beating us up, and it was about the Iowa thing again. So they came to my office one evening and said, if you could get a hold of Mr. Clancy, we think you know him. I said, well, I do, sort of millions of people. Said, if you could get him to put one of our agents in one of his books, that would really help our morale. And I said, that sounds worthwhile. Do you have a personal phone number? And they said, yes, sir, here it is. So I called this number, and I was getting ready to leave my office, which was usually around 7 o'clock or 6:30. It was probably 6:30. And he answered the phone.
Tom
And I
Clancy.
told him who I was. Yeah, he did. And I could hear a lot of background noise and stuff. And he said, "Helen, all right, I'm coming." And I said, "I'm sorry, Admiral." He said, "Look, it's not your fault, Admiral. I am supposed to get an award tonight at a black tie banquet. I can't get these damn new cufflinks to work on my shirt, and I'm running late. Can I call you in the morning?" And I said, "At your total convenience. And here's what I'm asking for. If you could work me." And he said, "Yeah, I'm working on one now, and I'm pretty much done with it." So he called me the next morning and apologetic about the night before. I said, "My word, sir, you don't, that's everybody just held him with such esteem. I mean, a real good man and
Sure.
very knowledgeable." And so he said, "I'd like to help you, Admiral, maybe the next time, but this time I'm so far behind schedule. My producer would wring my neck if I even proposed this to him, a publisher." And I said, "I certainly understand and respect and appreciate that. Would you keep us in mind for your next book or so?" He said, "Yes, I'll do that." And as you know, he got sick after that and so on and so forth. But anyway, I said, "But by the way, may I ask, what's the name of your book that you're working on right now about coming to closure?" He said, "I think it's going to do well. The name of it's going to be Clear and Present Danger."
Oh
I
yeah, love
said,
that book.
"Golly, if we'd have gotten that thing, that would have been a big deal." Yeah.
So how did
So,
you get up with Jag?
huh?
How did you get
Oh,
up with
the
the TV
Jag
show
tour?
Jag?
Yeah, well, they wanted to do this thing, and I had been in our office in San Diego, and some of the guys out there had been contacted by some movie people, out on the West Coast,
Uh-huh.
and they had told me that were there any restrictions, and I said no, do whatever they ask you to do. I mean, of course, you can't discuss cases or any of that kind of stuff, and then I was flying back from San Diego. And the CEO was with me, and he wanted more details and all that. And I said, just go with the flow. And if it really looks like you need some guidance, call your CHINFO office, your Chief of Information,
Hmm.
and get them to work in it and work on it. And that didn't happen. But when that movie came out uh, about the JAG Corps, they had everything in it pretty good. And a lot of our guys, lawyers, were playing enlisted guys, to get in this movie. And that was kind of a boost of morale. And the movie was a big hit. And the
The
only
TV
thing they
show.
had,
TV show, right?
yeah, it's a
Yeah.
TV show, but the movie was coincidental. But the TV show Jag, I was, out of the saddle by then, so I really didn't have anything to do with that, other than how they were picking people, and if that's what you're talking about. And they put the Jag in one of those movies, and he said it was the worst experience of his life. It took him all day to get his lines right. And it was just a few, like, I don't know the answer to that, but I'll find out. So
Oh, were you
that was
talking about?
done.
Were you talking about that movie with Tom Cruise?
Yeah, that's the one. That was I was
Oh,
referring to earlier.
oh, okay,
And the
okay,
only thing about that Code Red or whatever the hell the
yeah,
real nub of the issue was, our guys would have gone after that colonel with a relish. It wouldn't have been
uh-huh,
very, oh my God, it's a colonel. Uh-uh.
uh-huh.
You don't earn your stakes that way. So, but that was a weird experience that came out that
Did
was a
they
national
film that?
issue. Huh?
Did they film that in the naval yard, in the courtyard at all, or
No, no. They did. It was all in
Navy yard?
California, as I recall.
Oh,
Yeah. And that's why we got San Diego office and some others involved in bit parts.
right. Well, I always love
So,
that. My boss over in Afghanistan, Brian Palmer, and he ended up being a judge when he retired as a colonel. And I always love that in the movie where the judge he's like, "It's colonel or sir. I'm
yeah.
sure I deserve that." And he like, "Well, you can address me as your honor or judge. I think I've deserved that too." It's like, oh, oh, that was a great movie.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Few Good Men. That really was a good movie.
Yeah.
Well, sir, I don't have any questions for you. It's been an hour and 12 minutes, and I promised you an hour, and I
Yeah.
apologize for keeping you up. But I got to tell you, sir, thank you so much for joining us tonight. This is a great conversation. I know we could probably talk
But
for another 2 hours about the
yeah.
Russia and all the stuff that you did in Russia. Perhaps I can bring you on later on. We can talk about
Yeah.
maritime law, Russia, and
Yeah.
some of the crazy crap that they did when you were in there.
I was in Moscow when the attempted coup on Gorbachev occurred.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
a story. I mean,
Yeah.
it's an hour and 14
And it's
minutes
getting late.
now.
But anyway, listen,
Would you
it's
come on
really an
another
honor, Taco.
time and talk about this?
Yeah, sure.
All right.
And
Well,
I would encourage you to check out the book. It's this turned out to be a 3-year project, by the way. The guy who wrote it, I was featured in another of his books, which was this one, Sunsets Over Charleston, and he had a lot of people, as you can see some of them right there. And for some reason, he put me in this book. And when he interviewed me, we started talking about other things. And he wanted to know about the incident on the skimmer. And I told him about that. And we talked about it. He said, you ought to do an autobiography, and I'll be happy to write it. And the author, Tommy McQueenie, has just started on his 11th book.
right.
And he's a
And
real
that's
good
it.
writer.
So I got it right at the bottom, Truth Across the Water. You can buy this.
Yeah.
I got this on Amazon.
Yeah,
Delivered
and they
to
also
eBay.
have them now on eBay at reduced rates and stuff.
Right. Excellent. Well,
So,
I tell you, that's just a fantastic story and biography and background on you. And knowing you personally, it's really interesting now as an adult, as a man, to go back
yeah,
and know all the little things and how they fit in.
it's amazing. We've
And
been
of course,
blessed, Taco. We've been blessed big
we
time.
have. I got to tell you, I had my recruiter on, General Berger, who's a commandant of the Marine Corps. And you scared the living crap out of me when you wrote a recommendation for me for OCS to join the Marine Corps. And I go over to your house and you hand me this typed up recommendation, and I'm reading it, and it says, Mitchell has the ability to fart silently as he walks across the room, spreading the odoriferous odors throughout the air. And I'm like, I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, I got to shit can this thing. You got me so good, and then you handed me the real one. Oh, I was like, oh my God, I
Hey,
am in
Mitchell, that
so
was the real one.
that wasn't the real one. I know that wasn't the real one.
Yeah,
But you know what? Hey, give your wife a big hug
I
and
sure
give
will.
David a hug for
And
me.
your
Tell him
wife
thanks.
and your mom and dad.
I will certainly will.
And thank them again for all the help they always are. And they were
Yes.
to the Swifties, big time.
Yes, sir. I got a buddy of mine, Glenn Williams, was like, "Hey, thank you, Admiral, for exposing the truth about a certain person saving the country from a certain presidency." And Jeff Moses, I can handle the truth. Yeah. Anyway, hey, sir, you know what? I'd like to schedule you next year. We'll get you back on, and we'll talk about some of the Russia and some other exciting things that happened in your life. That Kerry thing is just such a small chapter, but it's such a big exposure, and the really cool stuff that's still hidden away. That I'd like to peel the onion back. And
Gaddafi hit list was another one of my exciting.
Oh, and the times that you were this close to being part of the Iran-Contra deal.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we have
somebody
a lot
else
to
took my seat. Yeah. Well, anyway.
Yeah. Hey, listen, you guys have a wonderful Christmas and a blessed New Year.
And all your listeners and others.
I appreciate everybody sticking around and hanging out for this. And if you guys are listening to this and you enjoy it, do me a favor, go to Tall Tales with Taco on YouTube, like and subscribe. Go to at Tall Tales with Taco or Tall Tales Taco Tuesday, whatever, on Facebook. Like and subscribe that. Get the updates so that you can see Admiral Schachte again on a future broadcast.
Thank you, Taco.
Hey, sir, have a great night. God bless you.
Come on 2021.
Yes, sir. We're going to be coming out Charleston once all this COVID stuff ends.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Good. Okay.
All right. You take care, sir.
God bless. Okay. God bless. Thank you.
Hey, folks, I really do appreciate you guys all sticking around tonight. That was an hour and 17 minutes of just pleasure for me. It goes by really fast. I know we could probably sit here for another 2 hours. And speaking of, Saturday, I have a special Tall Tales with Taco, and it is I called it episode 15 and a half because it's right in between my next interview on Tuesday with Eric Sabiston, and this is going to be with my cousin over in the UK who is 99 years old. I call him my cousin, Colin Bell, and Colin was a mosquito pilot in World War II, trained here in the US for a couple years, and they kept him as an instructor. Then he went back to the UK, transitioned into the Mosquito, and did 50 missions over Germany, 13 of which over Berlin, which was probably the most dangerous place in the entire continent to go fly into. And we're going to hear about it. Colin is the most energetic 99-year-old you've ever met who was declined to get a COVID shot vaccine. They wouldn't give it to him because they said he was too old. They needed to save it for the 75-year-old, 80-year-olds that were in worse shape than he was. But you're going to love it. Join me. It's going to be at 12 noon on Saturday. So after you've taken a couple notches out of your belt from dinner on Friday, you can sit back on Saturday at noon, watch the show. I did it at noon because of the time difference over in the UK for Colin. We'll make it good for him at 6 p.m. Anyway, until then, you guys have a Merry Christmas. It was awesome. Thanks so much for coming along with us. We will definitely see you on Saturday. And until then, Merry Christmas.